Hello, I'm Dr. Jeff Kingsley, and welcome to another edition of Riding in Cars with Researchers. I was at DIA in San Diego this year with a bunch of my colleagues. We were sitting around after one of the long days at DIA. For those of you who don't know, DIA is a massive clinical research conference, thousands and thousands of attendees. So we were sitting around talking after a long day, and one of my colleagues asked me, how did I do this? How did I get involved in research? How did I end up giving up my medical career, my traditional medical career? How did it happen? And I told the story of how it happened, and the reaction I got was pretty dramatic. There were a lot of wows, and why haven't you told this story online? People need to hear this story. So that's what I'm going to do now. I will tell that story for whatever it's worth. How I got into clinical research. I'm a family physician by training, and I had witnessed some physicians doing clinical research when I was going through my family medicine training. Actually, I had participated in some preclinical research when I was in med school and before I was in med school. But in residency training, there were some influential physicians who I saw doing clinical research, and it at least opened the door for me. I had a regular medical practice. I was still delivering babies, doing obstetrics. I was making nursing home rounds, seeing regular family medicine patients in my practice. I was faculty in a residency program, so I was teaching young physicians how to become good family medical physicians. I became medical director of the family medicine department and then became medical director of the urgent care center. I didn't have a lot of free time. I was also married with 4 kids. One day I was finished seeing patients and I was sitting in the physician's lounge, which is a small area where you can get a cup of coffee at the end of the day, with a good friend of mine, Dr. Joe Serber. And we're relaxing at maybe 7 o'clock at night, having some coffee before heading home. And Joe said, what do you think about starting a clinical research company? Just something to do nights and weekends. And that was the end of the conversation. Just a quick little conversation, but it stuck with me. And so I began doing a little bit of research on research. How much research is going on in the world? What's it like? How much research is going on in the city that I'm in? And I became intrigued. And I thought, you know what, this would be fun, because it'd be a great way to give free health care to the community. We don't need insurance. There's no co-pays. There's no nothing. All we have to do is do enough research that it pays the bills and supports an ability to give free health care to the community. 2 weeks later, I grabbed Joe, threw him in the car, and we met up with some real estate agents. We leased 900 square feet, little tiny facility, 2 exam rooms, 2 offices, a reception area, and a bathroom. And we were off and running. 2 months later, we convinced the first company to give us a research trial, and it was a hard research trial. It was a phase 2, randomized, double-blind, intravenous antibiotic trial. Twice daily IV dosing. The medication was a different color. The investigational medication was a different color from the comparator drug. It required lots of extra staff. You had to have pharmacy staff for mixing. You had to be able to maintain the blind. You had to cover the IV bags. You had to cover the tubing. Somebody separate had to be able to hook things up so that you couldn't break the blind. Very complicated trial. And you've got patients that are having to get their doses at 7 in the morning and 7 at night, and the doses take a couple of hours. And so very long days, very tough trial. That's our first trial out of the box. Well, we knocked it out of the park. In our first trial, we ended up being the 9th highest enrolling site in the world on our very first trial. I think we were maybe 2nd in the United States. We had patients all over the place. We were out of space in our facility. We had patients sitting in chairs in my own office getting their IV infusions because we had no further space. And I was having a blast. I was having so much fun. So now think about this. I still had a medical practice. So how did that work? Well, I was seeing patients in my medical practice, and I would get a call from my research practice, which was on the other side of town. I would get a call from my research practice that there was a patient that could screen for the research trial. I would finish up with a patient in my medical practice. I would say to my nurse, I'll be right back. I would casually walk out of my office, run across the parking lot, jump in my car, drive across the city, run across the parking lot, run into my office, casually walk into the exam room and talk to a patient about the research trial. And if the patient consented, we would begin all the screening activities. I would casually walk out of the office, run across the parking lot, jump in my car, drive across the city, run across the parking lot, walk into my office, walk into the next exam room as if nothing had happened. And I did that for 6 months. So for 6 months, I had a foot in both worlds. I was able to see them both patient by patient, live. And what am I seeing? Well, in my medical practice, I've only got a few minutes to see each patient. That's normal in a medical practice. You can't spend an hour with a patient in a medical practice. There are too many other patients to be seen, and in fact, the economic model doesn't work. You can't afford to spend an hour with a patient in a normal medical practice. So I'm not able to teach as much in my medical practice. I have patients who can't afford their copay. I have patients who have many medical conditions. I'm dealing with one medical condition today and then asking them to come back next month where we can focus on the next medical condition, but they're not coming back next month because they couldn't really afford their copay today. I'm writing prescriptions that I don't really know they're going to fill because I don't know whether or not they can really afford this prescription. They say they're taking their medicines, but do I really know if they're taking all of their medications? It's possible patients will take every other medication to help string their medications out so that they don't have to purchase as much because it's a strain on their finances. And what am I seeing at the same time in my research practice? Well, in my research practice, I don't even ask them if they have insurance. There's no copay, there's no cash register, there's no cash, there's no checks, there's no nothing. I'm able to spend tremendous time with my patients teaching, explaining why we think this antibiotic is going to be so much better than the gold standard for treating this type of infection. I'm able to give free healthcare, physical exams, EKGs, labs, cultures, blood cultures, the IV tubing, the IV antibiotics, everything for free. No copay. What a wonderful world. Teaching, free. In fact, I'm paying the patients to compensate them for their time and effort in helping us learn more about this antibiotic. So what happened? 6 months in to this hobby, something to do nights and weekends, I was in love. And so 6 months in, I gave 6 months notice to the hospital to replace me in the faculty position and the 2 medical director positions. I turned over my medical practice patients to my colleagues. So there was a full 12 months of overlap, including my 6-month notice, and that was 14 years ago. I just dedicated my career to research. My ability to teach is so enhanced. My ability to influence patients, give them free health care, compensate them for their time and effort, treat them with more respect than I ever could in my medical practice. It's just a remarkable model. And then I began to think, well, how do I get other physicians to be able to do this? And so I designed my company to be a turnkey operation, to make it so that other physicians, what are the reasons other physicians can't do research? Well, let me tackle those reasons. Let me make it as easy as possible for other physicians to say yes, and then to remain successful in research. And that's precisely what I've done. We have dozens and dozens of physicians that have successfully done research with us for well over a decade now, physicians that had never done research before. And we've set them up for success, and they now have a decade of experience under their belt, and now they are seasoned researchers who can make great decisions. That's what our industry needs. So there's the story. There's how I got to where I am today for whatever it's worth. If you're a patient, perhaps it'll inspire you to talk to your physician about research. If you're a physician, perhaps it'll inspire you to start. If you're doing research, perhaps it'll inspire you to continue. If you have any questions, call me. Absolutely, I am completely open to it. I want to teach and I want to help other people be successful with clinical research. I will do whatever it takes to make that happen. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. As always, thanks for riding along. Follow us on all the social media channels. And I look forward to having you ride along with me again in the future. Take care.